Welcome on back to the Juche Gang Reading Theater. And of course, today we are reading from Stalin's Collected Works, Volume 1. Today we are reading the work, starting on the work that is Workers of the Caucasus. It is time to take revenge. The Tsar's battalions are dwindling. The Tsar's navy is perishing, and now Port Arthur has shamefully surrendered. Thus, the senile decrepitude of the Tsarist autocracy is once again revealed. Inadequate food and the absence of any kind of sanitary measures whatsoever are causing infectious diseases to spread among the troops. These unbearable conditions are still further aggravated by the absence of anything like decent housing and clothing. Worn and weary, the soldiers are dying like flies. And this is after tens of thousands have been killed by bullets. All this is causing unrest and discontent among the troops. The soldiers are awakening from their torpor. They are beginning to feel that they are human. They no longer blindly obey the orders of their superiors, and often greet their upstart officers with whistling and threats. This is what an officer writes to us from the Far East. I did a foolish thing. On the insistence of my superior, I recently delivered a speech to the men. No sooner did I begin to talk about the necessity of standing fast for Tsar and country than the air was filled with whistling, curses, and threats. I hastened to put up the greatest possible distance between myself and the infuriated mob. Unquote. Such is the situation of the Far East. Add to this unrest amongst the reservists in Russia their revolutionary demonstrations in Odessa, Yekaterinoslav, Kursk, Penza, and other cities, and the protests of the new recruits in Guria, Imerchia, Kartelinia, and in South and North Russia. Note that the demonstrators are undaunted either by prison or bullets. Recently in Penza, several reservists were shot for demonstrating. And you will easily understand what the Russian soldiers are thinking. The Tsarist autocracy is losing its main prop, its reliable troops. On the other hand, the Tsarist treasury is becoming more depleted every day. Defeat follows defeat. The Tsarist government is gradually losing the confidence of foreign states. It is barely able to obtain the money it needs. And the time is not far distant when it will be deprived of all credit. Quote, "Who will pay us when you are overthrown and your fall is undoubtedly imminent?" Unquote. Such is the answer that is given to the utterly discredited Tsarist government. And the people? The dispossessed, starving people? What can they give the Tsarist government when they have nothing to eat themselves? And so, the Tsarist autocracy is losing its second main prop, its rich treasury, and credit, which keeps it filled. Meanwhile, the industrial crisis is becoming more acute every day. Factories and mills are closing down, and millions of workers are demanding bread and work. Hunger is afflicting the tormented poor of the countryside with renewed force. The waves of popular anger rise higher and higher and dash against the Tsar's throne with increasing force, shaking the decrepit Tsarist autocracy to its foundations. The besieged Tsarist autocracy is casting its old skin like a snake. And while discontented Russia is preparing to launch a decisive assault, it is pretending to put aside, its whip and, disguising itself in sheep's clothing, is proclaiming a policy of conciliation. Do you hear, comrades? It is asking us to forget the swish of whips and the whiz of bullets, the hundreds of our hero comrades who have been killed, their glorious shades which are hovering around us and whispering to us, "Avenge us." The autocracy is blazingly offering us its blood-stained hands and counseling reconciliation. It has published some sort of an imperial ukaz, and this ukaz of Tsar Nicholas II, dated December 12th, 1904, was published in the newspapers together with a special government communique on December 14th, 1904. While promising certain minor reforms, the ukaz proclaimed the inviolability of the autocratic power and breathed threats not only against the revolutionary workers and peasants, but also against the liberals, who had dared to submit timid constitutional demands to the government. As V.I. Lenin expressed it, Nicholas II's ukaz was a slap in the face for the liberals. So it had published some sort of imperial ukaz, and which it promises us some sort of freedom, quote unquote. The old brigands. They think they can feed the millions of starving Russian proletarians with words. They hope with words to satisfy the many millions of impoverished and tormented peasants. With promises, they would drown the weeping, the bereaved families, victims of the war. Miserable wretches. They are drowning, clutching at a straw. Yes, comrades, the throne of the Tsarist government is being shaken to its foundations. The government, which is using the taxes it has squeezed out of us to pay our executioners, ministers, governors, used chiefs, and prison chiefs, police officers, gendarmes, and spies. The government which is compelling the soldiers torn from our midst, our brothers and sons, to shed our blood. The government which is doing all in its power to support the landlords and employers in their daily struggle against us. The government which has bound us hand and foot and has reduced us to the position of rightless slaves. The government which has brutally trampled upon and mocked at our human dignity, our holy of holies. It is this government which is tottering and feeling the ground slipping from under its feet. It is time to take revenge. It is time to avenge our valiant comrades who were brutally murdered by the Tsar's Bashi Bazooks in Yaroslav, Dombria, Riga, St. Petersburg, Moscow, Badum, Tiflis, Zlatoust, Terkioretskaya, Mykolaiv, Kishinev, Gomel, Yakutsk, Gurya, Baku, and other places. Sorry if I butchered any of those. It is time to call the government to book for the tens of thousands of innocent and unfortunate men who have perished on the battlefield in the Far East. It is time to draw the tears of their wives and children. It is time to call the government to book for the suffering and humiliation, for the shameful chains in which it has kept us for so long. It is time to put an end to the Tsarist government and to clear the road for ourselves to the socialist system. It is time to destroy the Tsarist government. And we will destroy it. In vain are messieurs and in vain are messieurs the liberals trying to save the tottering throne of the Tsar. In vain are they stretching out a helping hand to the Tsar. They are begging for charity from him and trying to win his favor for their draft constitution. And this draft constitution was drawn up by a group of members of the Liberal League of Emancipation in October 1904 and was issued in a pamphlet form under the title The Fundamental State of Law of the Russian Empire, Draft of a Russian Constitution, Moscow, 1904. They are begging for charity from him and trying to win his favor for their draft constitution, so as, by means of petty reforms, to lay a road for themselves to political domination, to transform the Tsar into their instrument, to substitute the autocracy of the bourgeoisie for the autocracy of the Tsar, and then systematically to strangle the proletariat and the peasantry. So run! But in vain. It is already too late. Messieurs, liberals, look around and see what the Tsarist government has given you. Examine its imperial Yuchasi, a tiny bit of freedom for rural and urban institutions, a tiny guarantee against restrictions of rights for private persons, a tiny bit of freedom of the printed word, and a big warning about the unflailing preservation of the inviolability of the fundamental laws of the empire, about taking effective measures to preserve the full force of the law, a most important pillar of the throne in the autocratic state. Well, you had barely time to digest the ridiculous order of the ridiculous Tsar when warnings began to pour down upon the newspapers like hail. A series of gendarmerie and police raids commenced, and even peaceful banquets were prohibited. The Tsar's government itself took care to prove that in its misery. The Tsar's government itself took care to prove that in its miserly promises it would go no further than mere words. On the other hand, the outraged masses of the people are preparing for revolution and not for conciliation with the Tsar. They stubbornly adhere to the proverb, quote, only the grave can straighten the hunchback. Yes, gentlemen, vain are your efforts. The Russian Revolution is inevitable. It is as inevitable as the rising of the sun. Can you prevent the sun from rising? The main force in this revolution is the urban and rural proletariat. Its banner bearer is the Social Democratic Labor Party. And not you, messieurs liberals. Why do you forget this obvious trifle? And let's not forget that although he's talking about the Social Democratic Labor Party here, let's not forget that these messieurs liberals of his day are today's Social Democrats. To oversimplify the situation. The storm, the harbinger of the dawn, is already rising. Only yesterday, or the day before, the proletariat of the Caucasus from Baku to Baton unanimously expressed its contempt for the Tsarist autocracy. There can be no doubt that this glorious effort of the Caucasian proletarians will not fail to have its effect on the proletarians in other parts of Russia. Read also the innumerable resolutions passed by workers expressing profound contempt for the Tsarist government. Listen to the low but powerful murmuring in the countryside, and you will convince yourselves that Russia is a loaded gun with the hammer cocked, ready to go off at the slightest shock. Yes, comrades, the time is not far distant when the Russian Revolution will hoist sail and sweep from the face of the earth the vile throne of the despicable Tsar. Our vital duty is to be ready for that moment. Let us prepare then. Comrades, let us sow the good seeds among the broad masses of the proletariat. Let us stretch out our hands to one another and rally around the party committees. We must not forget for a moment that only the party committees can worthily lead us. Only they will light up a road for the promised land, called the socialist world. The party which has opened our eyes and has pointed out our enemies to us, which has organized us in a formidable army and has led us to fight our foes, which has stood by us amidst joy and sorrow, and has always marched ahead of us, is the Russian Social Democratic Labor Party. It, and it alone, will lead us in the future. A constituent assembly elected on the basis of universal, equal, direct, and secret suffrage. This is what we must fight for now. Only such an assembly will give us the democratic republic which we need so urgently in our struggle for socialism. Forward then, comrades! When the Tsarist autocracy is tottering, our duty is to prepare for the decisive assault. It is time to take revenge. Down with the Tsarist autocracy! Long live the Popular Constituent Assembly! Long live the Democratic Republic! Long live the Russian Social Democratic Labor Party! January 1905. Reproduced from the manifesto printed on January 8, 1905 at the underground printing plant of the Caucasian Union of the RSDLP. Signed, Union Committee. I would have been friends with Stalin. I'm going to read you another one. How about that? How about that, chat? Stalin work number 2. Long live international fraternity. Humes, you got some commentary to make? Yeah? Okay. Alright, Stalin work number 2. Long live international fraternity. Citizens, the revolutionary proletarian movement is growing, and national barriers are collapsing. The proletarians of different nationalities in Russia are uniting in a single international army. The individual streams of the proletarian movement are merging into one general revolutionary flood. The waves of this flood are rising higher and higher and dashing against the Tsarist throne with increasing force. And the decrepit Tsarist government is tottering. Neither prisons, nor penal servitude, nor gallows, nothing can stop the proletarian movement. It is continuously growing. And so, to bolster up its throne, the Tsarist government is inventing new methods. It is sowing enmity among the nationalities of Russia. It is inciting them against one another. It is trying to break up the general proletarian movement into petty movements and to incite them against one another. It is organizing pogroms against the Jews, Armenians, etc. And the purpose of all this is to separate the nationalities of Russia from one another by means of fratricidal war and by enfeebling them to vanquish them one by one without difficulty. Divide and rule. Such is the policy of the Tsarist government. That is what it is doing in the cities of Russia. Remember the pogroms in Gromel, Kishinev, and other towns? And it is doing the same in the Caucasus. What infamy! It is buttressing its despicable throne with the blood and the corpses of citizens. The groans of the dying Armenians and Tatars in Baku, the tears of wives, mothers, and children, the blood, the innocent blood of honest but unenlightened citizens, the frightened faces of fugitive, defenseless people fleeing from death, wrecked homes, looted shops, and the frightful, unceasing whiz of bullets. That is what the Tsar, the murderer of honest citizens, is bolstering up his throne with. Yes, citizens. It is they, the agents of the Tsar's government, who incited the politically enlightened among the Tatars against the peaceful Armenians. It is they, the flunkies of the Tsar's government, who distributed arms and ammunition among them, disguised policemen and Cossacks in Tatar clothing, and hurled them against the Armenians. For 2 months, they, the servants of the Tsar, prepared this fratricidal war. And at last they achieved their barbarous object. Curses and death on the head of the Tsarist government. Now these miserable slaves of the miserable Tsar are trying to foment a fratricidal war among us, here in Tiflis. They are demanding your blood. They want to divide and rule over you. But be vigilant, you Armenians, Tartars, Georgians, and Russians. Stretch out your hands to one another, unite more closely, and to the attempts of the government to divide you, answer unanimously. Down with the Tsar's government! Long live the fraternity of the peoples! Stretch out your hands to one another, and having united, rally around the proletariat, the real gravedigger of the Tsar's government, which is the sole culprit in the Baku massacres. Let your cry be, down with national strife, down with the Tsar's government. Long live the fraternity of the peoples, long live the Democratic Republic. February 13th, 1905. Reproduced from the manifesto printed at the printing plant at Tiflis Committee of the RSDLP. Signed, Tiflis Committee. Stalin book number 2, yo. Or Stalin segment number 2. How about another one? We'll go for Stalin read number 3. To citizens, long live the red flag. Great hopes and great disappointment. Instead of national enmity, mutual love and confidence. Instead of fratricidal pogroms, a huge demonstration against Tsarism, the culprit in the pogroms. The hopes of the Tsarist government have collapsed. The attempts to incite the different nationalities in Tiflis against one another has failed. The Tsarist government has long been trying to incite the proletarians against one another. It has long been trying to break up the general proletarian movement. That is why it organized the pogroms in Gromel, Kishinev, and other places. It provoked a fratricidal war in Baku with the same objective. At last, the gaze of the Tsarist government rested on Tiflis. Here, in the middle of the Caucasus, it intended to enact a bloody tragedy and then carry it to the provinces. No small matter. To incite the nationalities of the Caucasus against one another, and to drown out the Caucasian proletariat in its own blood. The Tsarist government rubbed its hands with glee. It even distributed a leaflet calling for a massacre of Armenians. And it hoped for success. But suddenly, on February 13th, as if to spite the Tsarist government, a crowd numbering many thousands of Armenians, Georgians, Tartars, and Russians assembles in the enclosure of the Vank Cathedral and takes a vow of mutual support in the struggle against the devil who is sowing strife among us. Complete unanimity. Speeches are delivered calling for unity. The masses applaud the speakers. Our leaflets are distributed, 3,000 copies. The masses eagerly take them. The temper of the masses rises. The defiance of the government they decide to assemble against next day in the enclosure of the same cathedral in order once again to vow to love one another. February 14th. The entire cathedral enclosure and the adjacent streets are packed with people. Our leaflets are distributed and read quite openly. The crowd split up into groups and discussed the contents of the leaflets. Speeches are delivered. The temper of the masses rises. They decide to march in demonstration past the Zion Cathedral and the mosque, to vow to love one another, to halt at the Persian cemetery, to take a vow once again and then disperse. The masses put their decision into execution. On the way, near the mosque and in the Persian cemetery, speeches are delivered and our leaflets are distributed. On this day, 12,000 were distributed. The temper of the masses rises higher and higher. Pent-up revolutionary energy breaks through the surface. The masses decide to march in demonstration through Palace Street and Golovinsky Prospect, and they then to disperse. Our committee takes advantage of the situation and immediately organizes a small leading corps. This corps, headed by an advance worker, takes the central position. And an improvised red flag flutters right in front of the palace. The banner bearer, carried shoulder high by the demonstrators, delivers an emphatically political speech, during which he first of all asked the comrades not to be dismayed by the absence of a social democratic appeal on the flag. No, no, answered the demonstrators, in the inscribed in our hearts. He then goes on to explain the significance of the red flag, criticizes the preceding speakers from the social democratic viewpoint, exposes the half-heartedness of the speeches, urges the necessity of abolishing Tsarism and capitalism, and calls upon the demonstrators to fight under the red flag of social democracy. Long live the red flag! The masses shout in response. The demonstrators proceed towards the Vank Cathedral. On the way, they halt 3 times to listen to the banner bearer. The latter again calls upon the demonstrators to fight against Tsarism and urges them to take a vow to rise and revolt as ununanimously as they were demonstrating now. "We swear," the masses shouted in response. The demonstrators then reached the Van Cathedral, and after a minor skirmish with the Cossacks, disperse. Such was the demonstration of 8,000 Tiflis citizens. That is how the citizens of Tiflis retaliated through their hypocritical policy of the Tsarist government. That is how they took revenge on the despicable government for the blood of the citizens of Baku. Glory and honor to the citizens of Tiflis. The face of thousands of Tiflis citizens who assembled under the red flag and several times pronounced sentence of death on the Tsarist government. The despicable flunkies of the despicable government were compelled to retreat. They called off the pogrom. But does that mean, citizens, that the Tsarist government will not try to organize pogroms in the future? Far from it. As long as it continues to exist, and the more ground that slips from under its feet, the more often it will resort to pogroms. The only way to eradicate pogroms is to abolish the Tsarist autocracy. You cherish your own lives and the lives of your dear ones, do you not? You love your friends and kinsmen, and you want to abolish pogroms, do you not? Know then, citizens, that pogroms and the bloodshed that accompanies them will be abolished only when Tsarism is abolished. First of all, you must strive to overthrow the Tsarist autocracy. You want to abolish all national enmity, do you not? You are striving for the complete solidarity of peoples, are you not? Know then, citizen, that all national strife will be abolished only when inequality and capitalism are abolished. The ultimate aim of your striving must be the triumph of socialism. But who will sweep the disgusting Tsarist regime from the face of the earth? Who will rid you of your pogroms? The proletariat, led by social democracy. And who will destroy the capitalist system? Who will establish international solidarity on earth? The proletariat, led by social democracy. And who will destroy the capitalist system? Who will establish international solidarity on earth? The proletariat, led by social democracy. The proletariat, and only the proletariat, will win freedom and peace for you. Therefore, unite around the proletariat and rally under the flag of social democracy. Rally under the red flag, citizens. Down with the Tsarist autocracy. Long live the Democratic Republic. Down with capitalism. Long live socialism. Long live the red flag. February 15th. Reproduced from the manifesto printed at the printing plant of the Tiflis Committee of the RSDLP. Signed, Tiflis Committee. Hell yeah. Ooh. Ooh. This is where we will start next. Not next week, but when I get back from my vacation.